My name is Bill Jackling. I didn't see my life in the way movies show it. No tunnel, no bright flash. What I remember first is the sound of my own name being shouted, like it was already too late. I was 29 years old. Inmate number I won't repeat anymore. And for 3 minutes in a concrete prison infirmary, my heart stopped. I know exactly how long because the nurse told me later. 3 minutes without a heartbeat. No pulse. No breathing. They were already preparing the paperwork when I came back. Before that moment, death wasn't abstract to me. Prison teaches you that fast. I'd seen overdoses, suicides, fights that went too far. I'd stood next to men whose eyes were still open, but already gone. I thought I understood how it worked. Body stops. Lights out. End of story. That confidence didn't survive what happened next. The strange part is this. The moment my heart stopped, fear disappeared. Not peace. Just the absence of panic. Like a switch flipped. 1 second I was choking, my chest burning, alarms going off. The next, I wasn't inside that pain anymore. I was aware. Too aware. I knew I was dead before anyone told me. Not logically. Instinctively. The way you know when you've crossed a line you can't step back over. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel forgiven. I felt exposed. Like every excuse I'd ever used was suddenly useless. I didn't see Jesus right away. I didn't see anything at first. What I felt was worse. I felt like my life had already been measured. Not weighed. Measured. And I knew, without anyone saying it, that it didn't come out the way I'd assumed it would. That realization followed me into the dark. Before that day, my life was simple in the ugliest way. Wake up to metal doors and count time by meals. Keep your head down. Don't owe anyone anything. Don't look weak. Don't think too far ahead. Prison shrinks your world until survival feels like a personality. I wasn't religious. Not angry at God. Just indifferent. Religion in prison usually sounded like bargaining. Guys finding faith when they ran out of options. I told myself I was different. I'd made bad choices, sure, but I wasn't a monster. That was my line. As long as I wasn't the worst guy in the room, I felt justified. Most days blurred together. Laundry duty. Card games. Weight pile. Noise that never fully stops. Nights were worse. That's when memories show up uninvited. Things you did. Things you didn't stop. People you hurt who don't even know your name. I told myself I'd deal with all that later. After release. After things were stable. I thought time was something I had plenty of. Prison sentences trick you like that. You start believing life is paused, not passing. The morning it happened felt no different. I'd skipped breakfast. My chest felt tight, but that wasn't unusual. Stress does that. I joked with another inmate about how bad the coffee smelled. I remember thinking about nothing important. That's what scares me now. I was living like consequences were already handled. Like the worst had happened, and the rest was just waiting it out. I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel warned. I felt comfortable in a place that should never feel comfortable. If I'd known how thin the line was that day, I wouldn't have recognized it anyway. Because nothing in my routine prepared me for how fast everything could end. It didn't feel dramatic when it started. No collapse. No slow-motion realization. Just a sharp pressure in my chest that made it hard to stand straight. I leaned against the wall, pretending it was nothing. You don't call for help unless you have to. My vision narrowed. Sound stretched. Like the room was moving farther away while my body stayed put. Someone asked if I was okay. I tried to answer and nothing came out. The next part is fractured. Faces bending over me. A guard's radio crackling. Hands pressing down on my chest harder than felt possible. Pain came back briefly, then vanished completely. That's when I noticed something was wrong. I could still hear them, but it sounded distant, like through thick glass. I wasn't gasping. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't inside the body they were working on anymore. I was above it, not floating dramatically, just separated, like I'd stepped back a few feet. I saw my own mouth hanging open, saw the color draining from my skin, saw the nurse shake her head in a way that meant she'd already decided something. I wasn't confused. That's the part one still can't explain. There was no question of what's happening. I knew exactly what had happened. I was dead, and whatever came next wasn't optional. I didn't feel pulled anywhere. There was no tunnel, no light. The room dimmed, not visually, but in importance, like it no longer mattered. Then the space around me changed. The prison disappeared without motion. No fading. No transition. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. I wasn't falling. I wasn't rising. I was being held in place, fully aware, with the clear sense that something was about to meet me. And whatever it was, it already knew my name. The space I was in didn't have walls. but it wasn't endless either. It felt contained, intentional, like I was standing exactly where I was supposed to be. There was no floor under my feet, yet I wasn't falling. No sky above me, yet I wasn't enclosed. I was simply there. My thoughts were sharp, clearer than they'd ever been in my body. I could remember everything at once, not like memories playing back, but like they were all present, stacked on top of each other. Every choice, every excuse, every time I told myself something didn't matter. I tried to move. I didn't need to. Movement happened when intention happened. I realized then how heavy my body had been my whole life. How loud, how distracting. Without it, there was nothing to hide behind. I became aware of something behind me. Not footsteps, not breath. Awareness. The kind that makes your spine tighten even when you don't have one. I didn't turn right away. I didn't want to. Fear crept in for the first time since my heart stopped. This wasn't the fear of pain. It was the fear of being known. I understood, without words, that I couldn't control what happened next. I wasn't being dragged. I wasn't being judged yet. I was being observed. Completely. There was no part of me that wasn't visible. When I finally turned, I didn't see a figure. Not immediately. What I felt was weight. Authority. Calm that didn't ask permission to exist. It didn't rush me. It didn't threaten me. It waited. And somehow, that was worse than anger would have been. The presence didn't arrive. It was already there. I just became aware of it. The way you suddenly realize someone has been standing behind you the whole time. When I could finally look directly at it, I understood why people struggle to describe this part. There was a form, but it wasn't limited by shape. Light, but not blinding. Solid, but not physical. The closest word is person, but that feels too small. What mattered wasn't how he looked. It was what I felt the moment I faced him. Everything stopped. Not time. Me. Every defense I'd built collapsed instantly. There was no urge to lie. No instinct to explain. I didn't feel accused. I felt understood so completely that excuses became embarrassing. I knew who he was before he said anything. Not because I'd been taught. Because my awareness reacted to him the way a shadow reacts to light. There was no doubt. No alternative explanation. Jesus didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. His attention was enough. It wasn't warm in a comforting way. It was steady, like standing too close to a fire that isn't trying to hurt you, but absolutely could. I expected questions. I expected condemnation. What I felt instead was sorrow. Not disappointment. Sorrow. As if he was seeing something I'd never allowed myself to look at honestly. When he finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. He said my name. And hearing it from him made me realize how long I'd been pretending not to hear it at all. I had always believed that circumstances mattered more than choices. That the environment I grew up in, the people around me, the pressure, the lack of options, those things explained who I became. I'd used that belief like armor. It made everything feel justified. Jesus showed me how wrong that was. He didn't argue with me. He didn't list my crimes. He showed me moments. Ordinary ones. Small ones. Times when I could have paused. Times when I knew better and did it anyway. Moments I'd forgotten because they didn't fit my story. I saw myself making decisions without anyone forcing my hand. Not dramatic ones. Quiet ones. The kind you never expect to matter. The kind you assume you'll make up for later. Each moment appeared, then faded. No commentary. No explanation. Just truth laid out without emotion. And somehow, that made it impossible to deny. What terrified me wasn't what I'd done. It was how casually I'd done it. I realized then that I'd been measuring my life against other people instead of against what I knew was right. I told myself I was decent because I wasn't the worst. That belief evaporated instantly. Jesus didn't look angry. He looked patient, like he'd been waiting for me to notice something obvious. I understood, finally, that time hadn't been paused in prison. It had been counting. Every day, every choice, every moment I assumed didn't matter. And for the first time, I wondered if I had already used more of it than I realized. The space shifted without movement. One moment I was facing him, the next I was standing somewhere else entirely. Still aware, still fully myself. But now there was distance. In front of me were two paths. They weren't dramatic. No fire. No gates. No signs explaining consequences. Just two directions, clearly different, separated by a wide, quiet space. I understood instantly that they both belonged to me. Not metaphorically, personally. The first path looked familiar. Narrow, worn down, like it had been walked 1,000 times. It felt efficient. Predictable. I could sense routine in it. Survival. Getting by. Keeping your head down. It didn't look dangerous. That was the problem. The second path was harder to look at. Not darker, just honest. It felt exposed, like there was nowhere to hide on it. No blending in. No shortcuts. I sensed loss there. Not punishment. Loss. Letting go of versions of myself I depended on. No voice told me which one was right. But my body, if I can even call it that, reacted. I leaned toward the familiar one automatically. That scared me more than anything else I'd seen so far. I realized then that choosing wrong didn't feel wrong. It felt comfortable. Jesus stood behind me, not pressuring, not guiding my shoulders, just present. The choice wasn't symbolic in a poetic way. It was practical, immediate, something I'd already been choosing long before this moment. The paths remained, waiting, and I understood that whatever happened next wasn't about where I was. It was about which direction I would keep walking once I was sent back. The familiar path opened up into a place that felt calm at first. Warm, quiet, safe. It looked like relief, like finally being able to rest without fighting. I saw people there, faces I recognized, men who had survived prison by learning how not to feel. They weren't suffering. That's what confused me. They were comfortable, settled, untouched by urgency. Tom didn't press on them. Nothing demanded change. But something was missing. Their eyes didn't track anything. Conversations repeated themselves. Laughter sounded rehearsed. They weren't in pain, but they weren't alive either. It was like watching people sleep with their eyes open. I felt myself relaxing there. That terrified me. I could sense how easy it would be to stay, to call this peace, to mistake numbness for safety. Then I noticed something else. No one there looked forward. They only looked sideways or back. Nothing new entered that place. Nothing grew. Nothing risked. I felt Jesus beside me again, still silent, still not judging. And suddenly I understood why this place felt so dangerous. Nothing was wrong there. And that was exactly the problem. The scene changed again, sharper this time. I was shown moments from my life that had looked fine on the outside. Times when I'd blended in, followed the rules just enough, said the right things, stayed out of extra trouble. From the outside, those moments looked like improvement. But then I was shown what was happening inside me during those same moments. The resentment, the self-pity, the quiet pride in getting away with doing the bare minimum. The way I'd protected my image while letting my character rot. It wasn't a punishment to see this. It was clarity. I realized how much energy I'd spent managing appearances. Even in prison. Especially in prison. I'd learned how to look changed without actually changing. How to sound reflective without being honest. What mattered, I saw, was invisible. The moments that carried weight weren't the ones people noticed. They were the ones where I was alone with my thoughts and chose comfort over truth. Silence over responsibility. Familiar patterns over growth. Jesus finally spoke again. Just one sentence. What you protect is what you serve. It wasn't said harshly. It wasn't said kindly. It was said like a fact. And for the first time, I understood that my real prison had never been the one made of concrete. The pressure didn't come from a voice. It came from understanding. The space around me tightened, not physically, but in meaning. Like the window to see clearly was narrowing. I wasn't shown dates. No disasters. No headlines. What I was shown was time itself, not as a line, but as weight. Every moment carried consequence. Not dramatic ones. Accumulative ones. The kind you don't notice until they've already shaped you. I saw how quickly people confuse delay with mercy. I felt how easy it is to believe you'll change later, when circumstances improve, when pain eases, when life feels fair. That belief felt fragile now. Dangerous. Like standing on thin ice because it hasn't cracked yet. Jesus didn't rush me, but everything else did. I sensed how limited attention is. How clarity doesn't stay forever. How awareness fades when it's ignored. The urgency wasn't fear-driven. It was practical. If you wait too long, you don't suddenly choose wrong. You forget how to choose at all. That realization pressed into me harder than any threat could have. Tom wasn't chasing me. It was leaving. The pull back wasn't gentle. I resisted it immediately, not because I wanted to escape consequences, but because I understood how rare that clarity was. I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to forget. The weight returned first. Then pain. Sharp, overwhelming, loud. My chest burned. My lungs screamed. Sound crashed back in without warning. Voices. Orders. Panic. I was slammed into my body like it was too small for me now. I gasped and felt hands restraining me. Someone shouted that I was back. I tried to speak and couldn't. My vision shook. My heart felt like it was restarting under protest. Confusion followed. The kind that makes you wonder if you imagined everything. But something stayed. Even as the room came back into focus, I knew what I'd seen hadn't been a dream. Dreams fade immediately. This didn't. I cried without understanding why. Not loudly, just leaking, like pressure releasing slowly. I was alive again, and I had never felt more exposed. I don't tell this story to scare anyone. Fear didn't change me. Clarity did. What stayed with me wasn't images. It was the awareness of how easily we lie to ourselves. How comfort can disguise stagnation. How time feels endless right up until it isn't. I didn't come back perfect. I didn't come back fearless. I came back awake. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. What you ignored doesn't disappear. It waits. Quietly. Patiently. And it shapes you while you're busy calling it harmless. I don't know why I was sent back. I don't know how much time I have now. I just know that the most dangerous moments of my life weren't the violent ones. They were the comfortable ones. The ones where nothing felt urgent. The ones where I told myself I'd deal with things later. Later isn't guaranteed. And neither is the chance to see this clearly again.